Right now, in the corner of my bathhouse here in Okinawa, there is a small strip of metal nailed above the wet stone wall. It is not silver, it is not steel. It has gone a soft brown-green with age, and where the water runs down beneath it, the wall is clean, perfectly clean. On the other side of that same wall, where there is no strip of metal, the black mold creeps in every rainy season like it always has. Same wall, same water, same warm, wet air. One side black, one side clean, and the only difference is a thin piece of copper that cost me almost nothing 30 years ago and has never once been replaced. You have fought this black mold in your shower, along your window frames, in the damp corner of the basement, on the north side of the roof where the sun never reaches. And every year you go to the store and buy another bottle of spray with the sharp smell that stings your eyes, and you scrub, and it comes back. It always comes back, because the spray was never meant to end the problem. It was meant to end this bottle, so you would come back for the next one. My name is Kenji Takara. I am from Okinawa, the southern islands of Japan, where the air is so warm and so wet for half the year that mold is not a visitor, it is a neighbor. I am 79 years old. My family has built and kept homes by hand in this climate for more generations than we wrote down. We did not have spray bottles. We could not run to a store. And yet the old temples, the old storehouses, the old wells of this country have stood damp and green and mold-free for centuries. Not by scrubbing, by understanding one quiet metal that living things cannot grow upon. We waste nothing here. We call it mate-nai. Solve a thing once with something that lasts, and never buy it again. Now let me tell you who does not want you to know this. Walk into any store and look at the shelf of mold and mildew sprays. A whole wall of bottles, bright colors, angry words, kills 99%, deep clean, fresh scent. Have you ever stopped to ask why? If these bottles worked, you must keep buying them? A thing that truly ended mold would be bought once, but mold that comes back is a customer who comes back every single season, forever. That shelf is not selling you a cure. It is selling you a subscription. The chemical companies know exactly what copper does. It is not a secret to them. It is a secret they keep from you, because a $2 strip of metal that works silently for 50 years, poisoning nothing, is a nightmare to a company that needs you at the register every spring. They would rather you scrub on your knees forever, buying, breathing those fumes, than nail up one small piece of metal one time and be free of them. Quick word before I begin, and I won't bring it up again. Everything I share here, there's far more of it than fits in one video. So I gathered it all into one book, The Takara Method. And right now I'm keeping it at a special price, lower than it'll normally be. The link's in the description, or point your phone at the code on screen. That's all. Now let me show you today's. So let me tell you what most people get wrong. Because if you misunderstand this one thing, the copper will do nothing, and you will say the old man was a fool. Most people think you kill mold. They attack what they can see, the black stain, and they feel they have won when it is gone. But the black you see is only the flower. The real thing lives in the air and settles wherever it is damp, invisible, waiting. You cannot kill your way out of mold, because more spores land tomorrow, and the day after, forever. This is why the spray always loses. It removes today's flower and does nothing about tomorrow's seed. Copper does not work that way. And here is the thing you must understand, or all of this fails. Copper does not kill the mold on contact like a poison. Copper works through water. When clean water runs across copper, even for a moment, it carries away the tiniest invisible trace of copper with it. And mold, algae, mildew, these simple living things cannot grow where those copper traces flow. It is the same reason a copper roof always has a clean streak running down the wall below it, while the concrete beside it turns green and black. The water touches the copper, then washes down the wall and lays down an invisible shield the mold cannot cross. So the mistake, the fatal mistake, is to place your copper below the wet spot or off to the side, thinking of it like a bar of soap that cleans what it touches. It does nothing there. The copper must sit above, at the very top of where the water begins, so that every drop of water passes over the copper first and then runs down across everything you want to protect. Water is the messenger. The copper is the message. Put the messenger below the door, and the letter is never delivered. Get this backwards and you will nail up beautiful copper and watch the mold grow anyway, right beneath it. Now, here is exactly what to buy, and it will cost you less than a single bottle of that stinging spray. You want a strip of pure copper, not brass, not painted metal, real copper. The best and cheapest thing to look for is copper flashing, the thin roll of copper roofers use, sold at any hardware store or building supplier. A small roll, a few inches wide, costs a handful of dollars and will give you enough to protect every wet corner in your whole house, with plenty left over. If you cannot find flashing bare copper wire, the thick kind, the ground wire from inside electrical cable with the insulation stripped off, works too, and you may already have a length of it in a drawer. That is all. A strip of copper, tin snips or strong scissors to cut it, a few small copper or stainless nails, or a bit of waterproof adhesive. That is the entire shopping list. Under $10 one time for a lifetime. And the first step is the one everyone is tempted to skip, the one that decides whether this works at all. Before you place a single strip, you must go and find where the water actually begins, not where the mold is, where the water starts its journey. And I promise you, it is almost never where you think it is. Let me show you how to find it. Stand in front of your moldy wall and do nothing but watch the water. If it is the shower, turn it on and watch where the spray lands and where it runs. If it is a window, wait for the rain or the morning fog and watch where the drops gather and begin to slide down. If it is a basement corner or a north roof, look for the highest point that gets wet, the top of the damp, the place the moisture comes from before it travels down. Follow the water uphill to its source. That highest wet line is where your copper must go. Everything below that line, the water will protect as it flows past the copper on its way down. Everything above it, you cannot help, because the water there has not yet met the copper. This is why I told you it is almost never where you think. People nail their copper right on the black stain, in the middle of the wall. But the stain is downstream, The water that made it started higher up, and by the time it reaches the stain, it has already chosen its path. You must meet the water at the top of its path, not in the middle. Find the source. Mark it with a pencil. That pencil line is your battle line. Now, cut your strip. For most places, a strip of copper flashing about 1 to 2 inches wide is plenty. Cut it long enough to run the full width of the wet area, the whole top edge of the shower wall, the entire top of the window frame, the full length of the damp line in the corner. The water spreads sideways as it falls, so your copper must be at least as wide as the wet area, or the mold will simply grow in the columns of water that missed the metal. If you need more length than one strip, overlap 2 strips by 1 inch where they meet, so there is no gap the water can slip through untreated. Now you fix it in place, and there are 2 good ways depending on the surface. On wood, a window frame, a wooden sill, the edge of a wooden shower bench, use small copper nails or copper tacks, or stainless steel if you cannot find copper. Never ordinary steel nails. They will rust and bleed an ugly orange streak down your clean wall. And where 2 different metals meet in the wet, they eat each other. Copper to copper, or copper to stainless. Tap the strip up flat against the wood along that top line. A nail every few inches, snug, but not so hard you tear the soft metal. On tile or stone or glazed surfaces where you cannot nail, use a bead of clear waterproof adhesive, a good silicone or a construction adhesive that says it holds in wet places. Run along the back of the copper strip and press it firmly to the surface along your pencil line. Hold it a moment. Let it cure a full day before the water hits it. That is all the skill it takes. If you can hang a picture, you can do this. Here is a detail most people miss, and it matters. The copper works best when the water actually touches bare copper metal. Not paint, not lacquer, not a coating. New copper flashing sometimes comes with a thin protective film. If yours feels slick or looks unnaturally shiny and plastic, wipe it firmly with a little vinegar on a cloth, or rub it with fine sandpaper or steel wool until it is dull, clean, bare metal. Bare copper is what the water can lift its traces from. A sealed, coated copper is a locked door. Open it and do not worry when your bright copper slowly turns brown, then that soft blue-green over the years. That is not decay. That is the copper working, and it works just as well green as it did shiny. The green streak on an old temple roof is not dirt. It is proof. Now, let me give you the extra layers, the things the man at the store will never tell you, because each one costs him another sale. The first, for places where there is no running water to carry the copper, a still, damp basement corner, the inside of a closet that just stays humid, a crawl space. The flowing water trick cannot help, because nothing is flowing. There, you use copper a different way, the way my grandmother used it in the rice store. You make copper water. Take a length of bare copper wire, or a few clean copper scraps, coil them up, and leave them sitting in a jar of water for a week. The water slowly takes on the faintest trace of copper. You will not even see it. Then pour that water into a simple spray bottle and mist it, lightly, onto the clean, damp surfaces where mold likes to start. It leaves behind the same invisible shield, and unlike the store spray, it costs nothing after the wire, because you refill it from the same jar forever. Waste nothing. One coil of wire in a jar can protect a corner for the rest of your life. The second thing most people overlook. Copper stops new mold, but it cannot erase the black stain already soaked into the grout or the wood. You must clean the old stain off first, once, by hand, before the copper takes over the future. And you do not need the poison spray for this either. Plain white vinegar, undiluted, brushed on and left for an hour, then scrubbed with a stiff brush, lifts most surface mold. For stubborn black that has soaked into grout, a paste of baking soda and a little water, scrubbed in, will pull it up. Clean it once, dry it well, then let the copper make sure it never returns. The vinegar and soda cost pennies and sit in your kitchen already. That is the whole war. Clean the past by hand. Guard the future with copper. The third, air. Copper handles the water, but mold also needs still trapped, damp air to thrive. The old builders of my country understood this deep in their bones. Look at any old Japanese farmhouse or storehouse, and you will find it lifted off the ground on posts, with gaps and vents built in so the air is always moving underneath and through. They did not fight dampness only with materials, they fought it with airflow, with design, so the wet could never sit still and settle. So after your copper is up, ask yourself, can I let this place breathe a little more? Crack the window after the bath? Leave the closet door open an inch? Cut a small vent into that dead corner. Moving air is free, and it is copper's great partner. Together they end what neither can end alone. Let me tell you where I first learned this, because it did not come from any store. When I was a small boy, my grandmother kept the family's rice and grain in a wooden storehouse behind the main house. The kura, we called the big ones, though ours was small. In Okinawa's wet heat, keeping grain from molding and rotting was a matter of survival. Lose the store to mold and the family went hungry in winter. And I remember she kept copper coins, the old coins, with the square hole in the middle, and lengths of copper wire tucked in among the sacks and hung near the damp corners. As a boy, I thought it was some superstition, a charm for luck through that square hole. I even laughed about it once, quietly. She heard me. She did not scold. She took my hand and pressed an old green copper coin into it and said, "This is not for the gods. This is for the rice. The green on this coin is the same green that keeps the mold from your food. Your great-grandmother knew it. Now you know it. Do not waste knowing it." I have never forgotten the weight of that green coin in my small hand. She could not have told you the science of it. She did not know the word for the element or how the metal moved through the water. But she knew, the way her mother knew, and hers before that copper and mold cannot share a home. Generations of women keeping their families fed through wet island summers had learned it by watching, by remembering, by wasting nothing they had learned. That is a kind of knowledge the store cannot sell you and cannot take away, because it was never for sale. It was handed down, hand to hand, green coin to small palm, across 100 years. And that same knowledge is now in your hands, from mine. So let me leave you with the larger thing, and then I will let you go back to your day. When you nail up that small strip of copper, you are not just stopping mold. You are stepping out of a line. The long line of people shuffling to the store every season, bottle in hand, breathing fumes, scrubbing on their knees, paying and never winning. You are saying, "Not me, not anymore. I will solve this once, the way it was solved for 1,000 years before the store existed, and I will be free of it." That is what self-reliance truly is. It is not grand. It is a small piece of metal and the quiet knowledge of how water moves. But every small thing you take back into your own hands makes you a little harder to sell to, a little harder to frighten, a little more the master of your own home, a home you can keep yourself, mend yourself, protect yourself, is a home that gives you dignity. And when you are gone, that copper will still be up there on the wall, soft and green, quietly protecting the people who come after you, your children, their children, most of them never knowing it is there, never knowing your name, only knowing that this old house somehow stays clean and dry and sound, while others rot. That is what we build for, not to be thanked, to leave something that lasts, to pass the green coin into the next small hand. Now I want to hear from you. Tell me in the comments where you are writing from, what country, what state, what damp old corner of the world you are fighting to keep dry. And tell me what you are protecting, an old house, a new cabin, a barn, a cellar. I read them, every one. It gives an old man great comfort to know there are still people who would rather solve a thing once and for all than be sold the same false cure forever. Tell me your name. Tell me where you stand. We are a village, scattered across the oceans, and I am glad you are in it. And come back, because next time I am going to show you something we do with plain wood ash and water, a clear liquid my grandmother made in a bucket that cleaned everything in the house, softened the wash, and kept the pests from the garden, all from the ashes of the cooking fire that most people simply throw away. There is a reason our ancestors guarded the ash bin like treasure, and almost no one alive remembers why. I will show you. Until then, waste nothing, my friends. Repair, do not replace, and guard your home with your own two hands, the way it was done long before any store opened its doors.